Have you ever been in a situation where you have to choose between what you want and what you should do? A duel between your desire versus ethics. I was on that spot once. My name is Justin, 54-year-old guy. I am a gynecologist. Yes, the one who checks kitties for a living. I have seen it all: big, small, wide, amazing-looking one, and used, extensively used, some reminding you of a fish market, some reminding you of a hairy Bigfoot. You get my point. I was married to, yes, you guessed it right, Kathy, 49-year-old. At times I wonder if this lost love guy was married to her. Anyways, Kathy was an amazing woman. She always kept herself presentable. She woke up, freshen up, bathe, put the makeup on, and be in the kitchen by 6:30 a.m. She made an amazing breakfast and packed my lunch with love. We have an 18-year-old daughter, Amanda. She is polar opposite of her mother. She just hates my job. The reason was simple. Kids in school used to ask her about her dad, and she told them what I do. Since then, everyone at school wants to meet me. Kids think my job is glamorous. It's not. It is one of the most dangerous jobs on the planet. Dealing with vagina is a sensitive matter. Now let's get back to my story. Kathy and I have been together for over 20 years now. We met at a family function. Her family was a close friend of my father, and our first meeting just continued, and it became a 20-year journey. I got my degrees and became a gynecologist. We got married at a family function, and Amanda was born a year later. Our marriage was full of ups and downs. We used to fight at times and then made love the same day. The best part about my wife is that she was a dream for any gynecologist. She was nice and clean. Never in my life did I find anyone who kept themselves so clean. After our 20th anniversary, Amanda turned 18 and moved out. She lives in a different city and is pursuing her higher studies. I do support her financially for her expenses. Once Amanda moved out, Kathy was alone and complained once that she is bored at home. I asked her to take up some hobbies or join a club. She joined a club. It comprised of women from the neighborhood. Although she knew everyone, but she did not interact with the ladies a lot. Being part of this club was a new experience for her. When I returned home, she used to tell me all the gossip she heard throughout the day. A few weeks passed, and I started noticing some very stark differences in her behavior. She was getting up late, her food tasted a bit bland, and one day she did not make me dinner. I did speak to her if anything is wrong. She nodded and said she is just under the weather. I did not pay a lot of attention. A few days later, I found that she has a small blister on her mouth. For any normal person, it is a common thing. For a gynecologist, it is a red flag. I did not push her on it as I did not want to make a big deal on it. I could be wrong as well. I decided to do a checkup. That night, I faked to have sex with her. I got down on her, and yes, I was right. There were clear signs of STI. It looked like herpes. I then started to cough and faked my way out of the room. Luckily, she did not suspect that I now know. Where did she get the STI? Is she cheating on me? I had my mind all jumbled up. Next day, I went to my clinic and I could not work. I left and met a private investigator. I explained my situation and asked him to check on my wife. He asked for some details and then asked me to install a specific application on my wife's phone. He asked me to install some hidden cameras in my home. I also informed that both my cars have LoJack installed in them, so we will know where the cars are at any point of time. I went home and installed the spyware. I took Kathy for shopping with me on Sunday, leaving the house for the PI to install the cameras. After just 3 days of investigation, the PI called me. He explained that Kathy was indeed having an affair with a neighbor. The guy is a husband of one of her club members. The matter was serious, and my wife's health was also at risk. I collected all the evidence and went back home. That night, I went to my study room and went through every call recording and every video. My mind went numb. I was angry, and for a moment, I felt that the world would just collapse on me. It was too much for me. It was now 2 full days that I did not speak to Kathy. I had to decide my way ahead. But first, should I tell Kathy about her STI, or should I just let her sleep in her own sweet world? I decided for later. It was unethical, but I never had her as my patient. So, I was not breaking any ethics. The very next day, I went to a lawyer and shared all the information I had, all the videos and all the recordings. I asked him to speed up the process as I wanted to be out soon. That evening, I went home and asked Kathy to sit down with me. I asked her what is going on. She was a bit surprised and stated that she did not understand the question. I then put a straight question. Why did you have sex with the neighbor bum? Was it worth it? Did he please you enough? She was stunned. How did you know? There are cameras around the house. They captured that fat bum on top of you in my bed. I also have some recordings as well. I played the video. She started crying and collapsed on the floor. How long has this been going on? A week after Amanda left home. I asked her to leave my house and get prepared for a divorce. I do not want to have you around me anymore. She started crying and asked to forgive her. I got up and called my daughter. I explained everything to her and told her that I would be divorcing her mother. She started crying. Her mother was crying all this while. Then I called her mother and asked her to pick her daughter up. She was stunned when I told her about the details. Once I felt that the old lady might die of a heart attack. I felt bad, but this had to be done. Her mother arrived an hour later and Kathy went with her. I was now all alone in my house. I fell to the floor and started crying. I did not go to the clinic for the next 3 days. On the 4th day, I got a call for an emergency. I went to the clinic and got ready for the case. What I saw was something out of a nightmare. I saw my wife. The herpes had flared up. Stress can do that. Her camel toe grew to a moose knuckle. She had fever. Her lips were covered with blisters and her kitty was now my worst nightmare. We gave her the emergency meds and put her under observations. I told her mother that the scars might stay and some will be there forever. She looked at me and said, "You were a good husband." She has to pay for her rides. I did get myself tested as well. Luckily, I was clean. The neighbor guy did not go without his dues. He infected 2 more women, including his wife. He was charged with domestic abuse. When his wife had confronted him with his cheating ways, he beat her up. She called the cops on him. He did not know that it was me who had shared the evidences with his wife. He will be in the cooler for some time. I got my divorce from Kathy in a few months. I had to part ways with a lot of money. My house was sold and I had to move into a new, smaller apartment. I never wanted to stay at that neighborhood after what happened. I made a one-time deal with Kathy rather than pay her every month. Amanda does not talk to Kathy anymore. Kathy did try to explain her cheating and Amanda had shut her down brutally. I guess the apple did not fall far from the tree. I did get a lot of calls and messages from Kathy. I never entertained them. Since I was alone, Amanda got me a dog. The dog visits the clinic with me and is almost a celebrity at the clinic. I do not intend to reconcile with Kathy in any ways and will continue to be single from now on. Until next time. Now for the second story. I can't believe I'm even sitting down to write this, but here goes. My newlywed wife, Amanda, cheated on me. We'd been together for a couple of years, tied the knot just 3 weeks ago, and everything seemed perfect. Or so I thought. A few days back, my friend Steve, who happens to be a private investigator, started having suspicions about Amanda. He noticed some inconsistencies in her stories during our gatherings and just had a gut feeling that something was off. Concerned for my well-being, he offered to look into it. Reluctantly, I agreed, not wanting to believe that Amanda could betray me. Steve's investigation uncovered a painful truth. Amanda had been cheating on me with some guy named Chad for 7 months leading up to our wedding. Yeah, you read that right, 7 months. The worst part? I found out just 2 weeks into our marriage. Devastated and angry, I didn't want to confront her immediately. I needed some time to process and, honestly, I wanted revenge. A couple of days later, she mentioned her friends wanting her to join them on a weekend trip to the city. I seized the opportunity and encouraged her to go, telling her she deserved a break after all the wedding planning. When she left for her trip, I went into action. I called our landlord, spinning a believable tale about a job transfer and a family emergency, convincing him to let me out of the lease. I needed to sever ties and move on. After canceling the lease, I took things a step further. I rented a storage unit and hired a moving company to pack up all of Amanda's belongings. The entire weekend was dedicated to erasing every trace of her from our apartment. Not a single item was left behind. It was tough, emotionally draining, but I felt it was necessary. I couldn't let her get away with what she had done to me. Once everything was packed up and safely stored away, I reached out to Steve and asked if I could crash at his place for a few days until I found another apartment. He was more than willing to help, and I moved all of my stuff into his spare room, trying to rebuild some semblance of normalcy. I kept my whereabouts a secret, not even informing my family. I was too angry and embarrassed to share the details of what had transpired. On the day Amanda was due to return from her trip, I anxiously awaited her call. It was late in the evening when my phone finally rang, and I'll never forget the sound of her voice. "What the hell happened to our apartment?" she demanded. Playing dumb, I feigned confusion, asking, "What do you mean?" She went on to explain that the locks had been changed and all her belongings were gone. I continued the act, pretending to be clueless. "I don't know," I replied, keeping my voice steady. "I've been out of town for a work thing. I thought you were with your friends for the weekend." Panic set in on her end as she tried to make sense of the situation. She suggested we had been robbed, but I let her ramble before dropping the bomb. "Well, maybe you should call Chad and see if he knows anything," I said. There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and I could practically hear the gears turning in her head as she realized that I knew about her affair. Finally, she whispered, "How did you find out?" "Steve helped me," I replied, bitterness evident in my voice. "He's a good friend, unlike some people I know." Amanda started crying, apologizing, and insisting it was a mistake. She claimed she still loved me and wanted to work things out, but it was too late. She had made her choice, and now she was facing the consequences. I informed her that I had canceled our lease and put all her stuff in a storage unit. I gave her the address and the code to access it. I didn't want to leave her completely stranded. After all, our marriage was over, and I wasn't going to let her walk all over me like that. Amanda begged me to reconsider, but I told her to kiss it. She started crying, asking where she was supposed to live now. I told her I didn't care and that she deserved better than what she had done to me. Then, I hung up the phone. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but I knew it was the right choice. She ended up having to move back in with her parents until she could find her own place again. What an idiot. Her dad reached out to me, apologizing for what had happened. He was super upset with her and also upset that he had spent $30,000 on a wedding just for it all to go to waste. Not to mention the embarrassment the family now had to deal with. Yeah, it must suck for them. Sheesh. Anyway, I haven't heard from her since, and I don't plan on reaching out to her anytime soon. I've started the process of filing for divorce and have been focusing on rebuilding my life without her. It's been a tough journey, but I know I'll come out stronger on the other side. That was intense. Do you think I did the right thing? 7 months is a long time to lie like that. Should I have taken it further?
Dear listener, if you have reached this far, please click on the subscribe button. It will be a great help.